more complex, more specialized. We were going to become more like magazines. We were going to be able to explain the whys and wherefores of the world. I didn't see that journalism being built in the 80s and 90s when I was at a newspaper. I saw prize sniffing, and I saw very modest ambition intellectually when it came to what we were going to provide. We wanted to look good. We wanted to have quote-unquote impact. We didn't want to do the hard work of explaining the world to our readers.
Baltimore is now a one-newspaper town. What happens if the Baltimore Sun goes away or just continues to erode to the point where it becomes so muted at what it was originally designed to do? What's the impact on the city?
I mean, I think what will ultimately happen is there will be eventually, probably as a nonprofit, some group that will start up a website that will provide state and local reporting. And they will keep it free for about a month and a half, 2 months. And then they will say, you know what, if you want this to continue, we need $5, $6, $7 a month from you as a reader. And a certain number of civic-minded readers are going to do it. And you're not going to get 250,000. You're not going to get what was once the circulation of these major metro dailies. Maybe you're going to get 30, 40, 50,000 people. But at $5, $10 a month, which, by the way, is half of what it would cost to get a paper delivered to your door, some people are going to do it. And that's going to provide enough income, not for the profit centers that big media had become in the 80s and 90s. That's never coming back. But it might be enough to hire 20 or 30 really strong reporters who are willing to do this work and willing to provide it for the people that want it. That's a diminished world of journalism. But I think ultimately, you know, state and local reporting does have an essential value. And at some point that value will find its level and people will, and that new media will be created. The unfortunate thing is that because newspapers so butchered this moment, that's going to have to be, it's going to be, instead of newspapers when they were strong building something like that and then channeling their readership into it, now it's going to have to come from scratch, and it's going to be without the institutional memory of these great newspapers that, you know, had the ability to focus a lot of good beat reporting on the work. Now you're going to be building that again from scratch.
And even the big papers are in deep trouble. You had an eager young reporter in the 5th season of The Wire who just wanted to get to the Post or get to the Times, and their earnings are out this week.
Everyone's getting killed. Listen, you can't give it away for free. This was insane. This was insane. You know, it was an incredible lack of understanding. But again, newspaper ownership at the chain level, I'm not speaking of the newsroom now, but I'm speaking of the owners and the chains themselves. They had pure contempt for their product. Just before I left the newspaper in '95, the guy who was running Times Mirror, the CEO, came to speak to us. And he gave a 45-minute lecture at the Sun, and he never used the words reporting, journalism, story. These were not terms that came to his lips. He spoke of cost centers, profit centers, market share. And it turned out that, you know, before he had been given the helm of the Times Mirror Corporation, he'd been selling cereal. He was at General Mills. Well, you know, they really looked at the copy, at the journalism itself, as the crap that went around the ads. All it was to them was a money tree, and it was all about the advertising. Well, the advertising is now gone, and for the last 30 years, circulation has always been a lost leader. You lose money getting the newspaper to people's doorsteps. So they could never conceive of a situation in which, as with the internet, there are no circulation costs. Everything is pure profit. You know, if people take the paper online for $8, $9, $10, and you don't have to deliver it to them, and you don't have to suffer newsprint costs and printing and trucks and gasoline and everything else, that's an industry that can survive, but not if you give it away. Then you not only are not making money off the product itself, you're not able to sell ads. I mean, you're done.
All right, this is a great question that I heard from the interview on Friday, but are you still a journalist? Do you still consider yourself a journalist?
No. Sometimes I joke that I'm a newspaperman without a newspaper. I intended to spend my life as a journalist, and I was going to stay at the paper that I was at. I was going to write books and come back, and the books made me a better reporter, and I very much thought I would end, you know, bumming cigarettes from younger reporters and, you know, telling them about what it was like, lying about what it was like to work with H.L. Mencken. It didn't happen. And instead I've become, I guess, just a gadfly to newspapers. I mean, I listen.
You're still a storyteller. You're still
That's what I
shining
am. I tell stories, and I happen to do it in television. And I hope to get back at some point. Every now and then I write an essay, or I hope to get back and do another book at some point. But ultimately, the most glorified thing I can probably call myself is a storyteller. It's not. It doesn't get much better than that. But I love newspapers. I love them tremendously, and I don't think we're better off without them. And I don't see anything worthwhile as a good newspaper replacing that which is falling out of existence here.
Curious what your reaction was when you heard that President Obama, that The Wire was one of his favorite shows. That he
I thought it was a crass appeal for my vote, and it worked.
Okay. Just your reaction to the popularity of The Wire. Did you expect it to be as well received as it was?
I was shocked that we stayed on the air. It was a very complicated dynamic. It was not a show that lent itself to the casual viewer very well, and Americans are nothing if not casual viewers of television. In a way, we had to sort of train viewers to watch the show differently than they absorb other television. And I didn't know if that would work. I credit to HBO for keeping us on the air as long as they did.
Tell us about Treme and what it's going to be focused on.
Trying to do a story about New Orleans post-Katrina, trying to tell it through the eyes of musicians and other New Orleanians. It's a much more delicate story than The Wire. It's not The Wire in any sense, and I guess people who come to it thinking it's going to be The Wire in New Orleans are going to be surprised or maybe disappointed. It's more about individual lives trying to reorient themselves and reorient their neighborhood and their city in the wake of this incredible systems failure. In the wake of this incredible systems failure that was Katrina and its aftermath. You talk to people in New Orleans, they will not say that a hurricane caused was the source of their nightmare. They will tell you that it was the Corps of Engineers, and they make a pretty good case.
I was going to ask if that's sort of out of your comfort zone, considering it's off the crime beat, but a lot of your other projects have been focused on trying to resurrect neighborhoods.
Nothing would have been more out of my comfort zone than, say, Iraq. But we got through Generation Kill, and we did it by embracing other journalists and other writers who know that material. In that sense, I guess I've made the transition from everything being personalized to being more of a filmmaker in that as long as you can incorporate those people who do know and keep them empowered within the project, and in the case of Generation Kill, it would have been Evan Wright who wrote the book. In the case of Treme, it's Tom Piazza, Lola Seeley, and my partner, Eric Overmeyer, who were all of New Orleans. So, I wouldn't presume to parachute in and do it without accessing voices that are genuine to the material itself.